thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in the studio today to talk about all things gardening are two of our favorites. We've got Chuck and Phil in the studio today. So before we jump into the items that they brought, let's have them tell you a little bit about themselves and their specialty. Phil?
I'm Phil Nixon. I'm an extension specialist in entomology, retired from University of Illinois, and I'm what they call a urban entomologist. Means I answer questions associated with trees and shrubs and flowers and turf and things like that.
And the pesky things that bother them.
If it crawls, I know it.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Chuck?
All right, I'm Chuck Voigt, and I retired from more or less the same department Phil was in, the Department of Crop Sciences, which is where horticulture ended up landing toward the end of my career. Vegetables and herbs were my specialties, but I can do most anything, as can Phil, I think. So.
Did you guys work together? Have you guys known each other for years?
A little bit, but not so directly.
His office was 3 doors away from me, so we kind of Okay,
it was, cool. Yeah, to be a fly on the wall.
We would wander over to Bevere Hall for lunch quite often.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice. All right, so we are. And I wouldn't call these the dog days. Last week was more the dog days. We're past that. So, where do you want to start? Insects, flowers.
Sounds fine.
Okay, let's do that. Tell us what we're seeing.
We're seeing what I like to call syrphid flies or flower flies. These have been quite pesky around gardeners for the last few weeks. And these are beneficial insects by two different directions. The adults, as you can see, being on a flower, do feed on flowers, and particularly in the spring of the year when it's kind of cold, for some of our bees to be out and pollinating things, these guys are out there doing it because they have huge muscles in their thorax in the center part of their body that if they're able to move those at all, it warms them up and they're ready, good to go. So they'll be out pollinating fruit trees and so on when the temperatures are in the 30s or early 40s, and most of the bees are too wimpy to be out there until it's at least 50 degrees. So, and usually 55 to 60. So actually some of your apples get pollinated and things like that by these guys when it's a little cold out there sometimes. But the larval stage feeds on aphids and other small insects. And this time of year, as you may have noticed when you drive around, there's a bunch of soybean fields out around the Midwest, and we get these insects will feed on the aphids that are on the soybeans and on other plants around, and particularly when we have some cool temperatures in the central part of the Midwest, from northern temperatures, northern winds coming down and bringing us nice temperatures in between the 90-degree temperatures. They bring aphids with them, and the aphids will increase, and so the syrphid flies increase. And so they can become quite numerous, quite pesky. People call them sweat bees, but they are really not sweat bees. They are a fly. They're also called hover flies because they will hover around you. They also seem to have a propensity for electricity, which is interesting to me. The other picture has been on the screen are some on my saw that I will use to cut branches off of trees and so on. It's a battery powered thing, and they just seem to mob that thing. They just love that. And I think it's the electrical materials in it or something like that. But at any rate, they can be quite numerous and quite pesky, but they do not have the equipment to sting with. But it kind of gets along in life by, we tend to leave them alone. They are pollinators. They are predators of pest insects, and they do not sting. So cut them a little slack.
Cut them some slack. Okay. We're going to go to Chuck with some.
Okay, I was out looking for things today, and first thing that came to my mind were these tuberoses. I don't know if you're familiar with tuberose or not.
No.
It's the genus is Polyanthes, Polyanthes, tuberosa, which what grows underground to me looks more like a bulb than a tuber, but
that's for another day, right?
Right. This one is sold to me as pink, and you can kind of see the pink in the buds. opens up, and there's, if you have a good imagination, there's still a little bit of pinkish to them. The standard for years were a single white and a double white. And lately the colors have been showing up. These are the first ones to come out for me, but I have one that supposedly is yellow with probably about that much yellow, not just screaming yellow. And then there's one that's supposed to be purple, which hasn't ever flowered yet. So we'll see how that goes. But a wonderful fragrance. I don't know.
Oh, I love a yummy smell. Not yummy, but lovely.
And it will perfume an indoor room, but it won't overpower like a
Yeah.
A lily.
a lily
Or lilac.
Yeah, I was
Or
thinking
a lilac, yeah.
the
That smells really nice.
paper white narcissus is what I was thinking about. That can literally drive people out. But that's fun. It's
pretty.
it's a clump of what I would call bulbs. Each one, when it gets to a certain size, will flower the following year. That one dies, but it puts a whole bunch of them around the outside, so the clumps keep getting bigger and bigger. And when they get bigger than your fish, theoretically, you should divide them.
Okay.
But from personal experience, I would say when you divide them, you should give a bunch of them away or do something with them, because otherwise, soon you end up with 20 boxes of things you're carrying in and out of the cellar each fall, and that's not good gardening. Originally, we got them. My grandpa worked as a custodian in a bank, and I think they had them forced there. And when they were done, he brought the bulbs home and grew them, and then we kind of inherited them.
Love that.
And so I've gotten these more recently. This also has a story. It's a little rudbeckia. I was speaking at the Garlic Festival in Saugerties, New York, and Betsy Williams, a famous herb lady, and I were in the same motel, different rooms. Her husband Ned was there, and I was there. And anyway, in the next to the parking lot, there was this kind of natural area, or some would say a weedy area. But this was growing there, and Betsy was threatening to dig it up and take it home with her. And I said, well, that seems kind of drastic. So it had bloomed far enough that I took a couple of mature heads and took them home, planted the seeds. And now it's kind of naturalized at the farm, so I don't know. Weed might not have been that far from the truth. But so you have to be careful with that. A long time ago, when I was 12 or 13, I brought home this pretty little ground cover plant with purple flowers and got it at the farm. And it was ground ivy. And we don't like to call it Creeping Charlie because I feel guilty enough about it already.
Which is called Creeping Chuck, right?
Yeah, there
Creeping
you go.
Chuck, there we go.
And this is a little aster that's definitely more or less a weed, but also sort of a wildflower. It's been at the farm forever. And this is my effort to, kind of my annual effort to, for the Goldenrod Anti-Defamation League. Goldenrod has the reputation of being a horrible hay fever plant.
It does.
And it isn't. As my old TA, Mark Uchansky, would tell the story, the pollen on this is thick and sticky, not unlike, pardon me, snot. And so the only way it's going to get anywhere is on a bee's legs when it's pollinating the flowers. The things that are going to cause you problems are the things that are wind pollinated, like ragweed and giant ragweed, which unfortunately bloom the same time as ragweed. And through cartoons and everything else, ragweed has been depicted as this villain. Goldenrod, sorry. Ragweed is the villain.
Ragweed is definitely the villain.
And so this is my annual attempt to dissuade people from thinking that. In fact, anything that's insect pollinated really is not going to give you hay fever problems. You could be allergic to plants in the Asteraceae and get a contact dermatitis if you rub up against them. But in terms of hay fever, should not be a problem unless you just pull off the pollen
really
and like pack it up your nose. And if you do that, you deserve hay fever.
Now, is goldenrod, I remember Jim or John Bodensteiner brought a piece on last year. Isn't that one of the last flowering plants that the insects can... There was something about goldenrod that made it extra, like a little bit more PR. Can you give it another PR boost?
Yeah, well, it's
Since we're on the campaign.
well, there are a lot of different goldenrod species. Some of them are actually sold for as garden plants. Some of the smaller ones and showier ones. In fact, I think one that is sold for gardens is called showy goldenrod. I think is the common name for it. But yeah, it is one of the later bloomers, and it is one that you can many times see later insects on, and there are some little daisies and so on that are also fit that category. But yeah, it's not going to be a real problem. I have hay fever. I'm not having any problem. I like to always tell people, I've told people when I've taught, is that if it's got a pretty flower to attract an insect or a bird, hummingbirds or something like that, it's not a hay fever problem. Just like Chuck said. Essentially, if it's got a nice looking flower to attract somebody to pollinate it, then it's not using the wind.
Gotcha.
You know, it's just kind of like
Huh?
and you look at ragweed is blooming right now. Will bloom throughout the latter half of August through September, and all you got are little green spikes that if you go mowing that area, you'll notice these yellow puffs that'll come up from
Yes.
all the
Clouds
pollen.
of it descending.
That's when I go
and so
running.
on, and so it's wind pollinated. Many people have problems in the spring when the pines are pollinating, they're wind pollinated. When the maples are pollinating, they're wind pollinated for the most part. So none of those are things that we tend to put in bouquets as pretty flowers. Their flowers are not really obvious, and many times are very indistinct. And if you're just blowing your pollen around, you don't have to bring anybody to you to help you out.
Okay. So we just did our duty, our annual goldenrod positive PR.
You're a nice guy, despite what some people say.
Okay. All right. We're back to you. We're talking butterflies and moths.
Yes, well, just butterflies.
Just butterflies.
Just butterflies.
Okay.
Interesting thing is that many times people talk about, well, I just haven't seen any butterflies in my yard, things of this nature. Well, one thing that's important to do, and we figured out this with monarchs, that to have more monarch butterflies, you need to plant a milkweed, right? And we've got that figured out. Well, if you want to get some other butterflies, you need to plant the plants. It's even before Field of Dreams, one of my favorite things was if you grow it, they will come, and that's an important feature. The one's the most common, that's in many of our areas, and one that's easy to grow a lot of plants for it is the black swallowtail. The black swallowtail is going to feed on several garden plants in what used to be called umbelliferae. I think they've got a new name for it now. But essentially it's parsley, it's carrots, it's fennel, dill. All of these things are great sources of food for the caterpillars of the black swallowtail. And it looks the way it does, the adult black swallowtail, with the black wings with the spots on it, and the blue or in the hind wings, because it is a mimic. Everything we talk about today is more or less a mimic for one that we will talk about. So this is a mimic as well. The next one is giant swallowtail. That one's a little bit harder to grow things for, because giant swallowtail's common name for the larval stage is called orange dog. If you got a caterpillar called orange dog, guess what it feeds on? Citrus.
Okay.
All right. It feeds on oranges, feeds on lemons, feeds on limes. We don't have a lot of those in the Midwest, but we do have some things that are in the same family, and one of those is the one that I'm holding. This is called hop tree or wafer ash. It's not a true ash by any stretch of imagination. Emerald ash borer does not like it. It's in a different plant family, actually. It's in the Rutaceae along with its citrus. And so I planted this in my yard just to get giant swallowtail butterflies.
And did it work?
Oh, it does.
Okay.
It does. We get them every photo that I had was out of my yard.
That's yours.
So,
Okay.
you know,
So
you
proof
plant
is
it,
in
they
the
will
pudding.
come.
Okay.
This is a hard plant to find and to purchase. The ones that I have, I purchased from Moni Nursery up where up north, and they're a specialized nursery in Illinois growing native plants, and so particularly trees and shrubs that are native. So I got this one that I'm holding actually came from there. There are other sources, of course, and you can get online and find those, but it's not something that it's a common edge Illinois plant, something that grows along the edges of areas. The next one is the model for all these other butterflies, and that is the pipevine swallowtail, and it feeds on pipevine.
Oh,
Dutchman's pipe, which is kind of an old-fashioned over the trellis around the porch type of vine. It's a very aggressive vine. We have it in our yard, and it's amazing how far it will go and come up and climb up to the tops of trees and things of this nature. But there are toxins in the pipevine that the caterpillar picks up and keeps them into the adult. And you can see on the screen the black wings with spots, the hind wings with blue, fits right in with the black swallowtail. This one does taste bad. Birds find that out very quickly. Once they grab the first one, they're going to cough it back up. And it does have some pretty nasty little toxins associated with it. Another one that mimics the same pipevine swallowtail is the spice bush, and the spice bush swallowtail is going to feed on spice bush, which is a native shrub. Looks beautiful in your yard. Very nice shrub, very nice rounded 4 to 6 foot shrub. Also feeds on what I have in my hand. This is sassafras, which is another plant that's a native tree, small tree, edge tree. And this one apparently really needs mycorrhizae in order to survive well. We've tried planting in our yards 3 or 4 times without success until we found one that we could bring the soil with it and brought the mycorrhizae, the fungi that lives on the roots and helps increase apparently uptake. And then the final one I want to talk about is zebra swallowtail. It's not a mimic of the pipevine, but it'll feed on pawpaw, sometimes called Michigan banana. And again, it's an edge tree that you know, when I go out of my way to find these things and put them in your yard, because like I said, if you plant them, you will have the butterflies. If you don't plant them, you're relying on somebody else's plants to provide the butterflies to fly through your yard. And you need to stand up to the plate.
Take action.
Grow the plants, take action.
Get your own butterflies.
Bring in your plants.
Okay.
And we have a local book which works very well for identifying them. This was written by a previous professor of entomology at the University of Illinois, Jim Sternberg, with others. And it's very good at helping identifying your butterflies that you've got in your yard and find out what they feed on and so you know what to plant.
Okay, excellent.
Available through the Illinois Natural History Survey website.
Okay. Get your copy today and get your butterflies. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And now Chuck's
It's muskmelon time.
It's muskmelon time.
And I've talked before about my 2 favorites, Athena and this one, Sugar Cube.
Okay.
And it might be interesting to note that my sister Donna likes Athena, loves this one.
Loves this one.
I don't have a Brix meter anymore, but I'm sure the sugar content of this is through the roof. It's crazy.
Donna's got a sweet tooth, huh?
Well, don't we all? They have flesh that is firm, more like the ones we get in the winter from out west. Those don't do well here because they grow in the desert and don't have the leaf disease resistance that we need here. Somehow these have both. They have that quality flesh and the disease resistance that we need, and they do quite well. They're both hybrids, and I just live in fear that something else is going to oust Sugar Cube from the marketplace because it is It is just wonderful.
Okay. What's the flesh look like? What color?
It's orange.
Orange? I bet it smells sweet too. There she is.
There we go.
Did you have a good harvest of these this summer?
Not so much.
No? The weather, you thinking, or?
Yes, they were drought stricken like everything else, and then when it rained, the weeds took over. And because I was lulled to sleep by the drought and the absence of.
Pass it over the allergic gentleman.
Yes, we found out
in
that
the center.
Phil is allergic to muskmelons, so what a good day for me to bring this.
Yeah, well,
Smells good too.
But yeah, and the only maybe downside of great hybrids like this is they're very uniform. So yesterday and the day before, I picked the whole crop. They were all
Ready to go?
They were all ready to go, and so you end up being able to gift them because you can't possibly keep up with them. But what do you think?
It's incredible.
Yes.
It's incredible. That's really good.
So-
You're missing out. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, well, yeah.
So buy sugar cube muskmelon seeds and keep it alive because it's at the whim of whatever seed company has the inbreds that they use to make the hybrid.
We've got about 3 minutes left. So water-wise, do these prefer to be evenly moist? Do they? How do you take care of them?
Well, they certainly like to be more moist than they've been most of
not.
this season. Watermelons are better at standing drought, I think, maybe because of where they come from and those kinds of things. Muskmelons would really prefer, and my major professor would kill me for saying prefer because plants can't prefer. But they do better with an even source. You don't, too much water is not good because it kind of dilutes the flavor. Back in 2015, when we were inundated with water through May and June, and the flavor was not as good. Because these ripened when it was getting dry again, after that brief flurry where we got adequate rainfall for a month. So now the flavor is just really
good.
Unfortunately, they're not going to survive much more because of a combination of the heat, the drought, and the weeds. But what a wonderful brief season!
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, I have an apple tree in my yard that struggles every year with stink bugs. They get the little holes, right?
okay.
But this year, for whatever reason, and I wanted to know if it was maybe weather related, a lot of the apples are unblemished this year. And I've lived in the same house for 10 years and they've been bad. Well, not bad, but they've been blemished and diseased. And this year there are so many apples that look really, really good. And I'm shocked because it was a strange weather year. So what do you make of that? All of a sudden they just shaped up.
Well, it's probably not as much insect related, but it could be. We had some pretty, what we have is, apples they get their seeds around by being eaten. So they are meant to be eaten. And the tree wants them to be eaten because that moves the seeds. And so they are susceptible to a lot of different insects and diseases. Earlier this year, we had some quite rainy weather at the time when insects were very active, say in much of June or in late May, and insects get diseases and die, and that would help reduce the number of insects. But then as the apples started to get bigger, we hit a dry spell. Essentially, there wasn't any rain in much of June and much of July, and diseases do better under damp conditions. They take out the bugs better. They take out the plants better. They get on the apples, and you get apple scab and things of this nature on the apple trees, and that will reduce their growth, and you'll end up getting some knobby apples from some of the diseases that they get and things of this nature. So I think we had kind of a perfect storm of being wet early. We took out a bunch of the insects. Then it was dry when the apples were growing and maturing, which also concentrated the flavor.
Yeah.
Just like the muskmelons. and then the and then it's rained again, and so
It wasn't all bad.
wasn't all bad. They were able to fill out.
Okay. All right. That's the time, gentlemen. Thank
All
you
right.
very much for coming in. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. If you've got questions, send them in to us. You can find us on Facebook or search for us on Gmail at yourgarden@gmail.com. Thanks. Bye-bye.